Hi, JT here. Welcome to Outta the Far. Hope you had another great week wherever you might be. We're going to jump right away to a question today. How much does talking right matter? Is it a matter of life and death? A group of frogs were traveling through the woods, and two of them fell into a deep pit. When the other frogs saw how deep the pit was, they told the two frogs, they said, you know what? You guys are as good as dead. The two frogs ignored the other's comments, though, and continued to try and jump out of the pit with all their might. The other frogs just kept telling them to stop, that they were as good as dead. Finally, one of the frogs took heed to what the other frogs were saying, and you know what? He gave up and he fell over dead. The other frog, though, he continued to jump as hard as he could. Once again, the crowd of frogs yelled at him to stop the pain and just die. He jumped even harder, though, and finally made it out. When he got out, the other frog said, "Did you not hear us?" The frog looked at them and said, "I can't understand what you're saying." He told the other frogs, he says, "I'm hard of hearing, but nevertheless," he said, "I sure appreciate you all encouraging me to jump harder than ever before. Otherwise, I would have never made it out of that pit." Now, this is a funny story, but it brings us to a very interesting passage in the Bible, Proverbs 18:21. And I am going to be reading this out of the Amplified. It says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it and indulge in it will eat its fruits and bear the consequences of their words." Today, we're going to check out a thing that's been on TV nonstop lately. We're going to dive into the field of quantum physics and how it revolves around everything in our lives, especially in the faith realm. Now, I know some of you are like, what in the world has quantum physics got to do with God? Some of you are probably thinking, I didn't know we were signing up for a Star Trek movie on your podcast. So what is the quantum realm? Well, I was a machinist at one point in my career. I was asked to make a piece of steel and cut it down to 5/10,000ths of an inch. And I'm a math guy, so to kind of tell you how small that is, that's about the size of a piece of paper. A piece of paper is about 4/10,000ths of an inch. Now, we had old equipment in this machine shop. I had told you all before, my dad was a preacher, but he also taught machining for years at one time in his career. And my grandfather, believe it or not, was a machinist before him. Now, my dad, he looked at the blueprint and he told me, he said, you know what? It's impossible to make the thing. The plant president wanted it made, but he said it's impossible. You see, the machines in the factory, they were too old to cut such a measurement. He said it can't be done. My dad said, you know what, son, that's like a spec that NASA would want on a spacecraft. There's just no way on these old machines you're going to be able to do it. I could remember after a long night of sweating it out, I pulled it off somehow. Come to find out, the plant president had been testing me on it to see if I could do it. But I'll never forget trying to dial in those old machines into a seemingly impossible measurement. So in perspective, the quantum realm is so much smaller than that it's invisible. If you can imagine, at one time, an atom was once considered the smallest building block in matter. The quantum realm is smaller than that. Protons, neutrons, electrons. Scientists have discovered this unseen world, this quantum universe that moves about and reacts to our speech, our thoughts, and to light. First thing I want to talk about today is the tongue in the quantum realm. Let's start with the basics. The tongue, though small, wields immense power. That isn't just a metaphor, it's a profound truth that extends into the quantum realm. Quantum physics reveals that everything in the universe vibrates at different frequencies. Light, energy, matter, they all exist in a constant state of motion. Scientists like Max Planck and Albert Einstein have shown the observation and intention can influence the behavior of particles at the quantum level. This means that our words, carried by sound waves and fueled by intent, can send ripples into the quantum field. So, in other words, the quantum universe moves and reacts to our speech and thought. Additionally, it's noted that light is a fundamental component to the quantum universe. This suggests that light, much like speech, can influence the quantum realm. Even today, leading scientists can explain it. The power of speech. Genesis 1, we see the ultimate example of the power of speech. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God's spoken word brought light into existence, setting the stage for all creation. It wasn't just a poetic language, it was a demonstration of divine power. When God spoke, his words vibrated at a frequency that sparked creation itself. When we speak, we are participating in a divine act. Our words, like God's, have the power to create an influence. The Bible says this in Hebrews 11, the 3rd chapter. It says, "By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what we seen was not made out of what was visible." Our words can shape realities in ways we might not fully understand. Strong words, strong statement. I want to use the old analogy, and I know everybody out there knows it. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. We know that's not true. Words cut pure to the bone. I told you in my past, being a preacher's kid, I was an outsider. I was picked on by other kids for being a preacher's kid. It hurt me at that time, but built a lot of anger in me also. A lot of people have trouble getting in the gym and working out, not so much me. I live for the gym because of those early days of those hurtful words. I find it interesting the place we find ourselves in as a society. Now, I'm not going to try and point fingers at anyone. In fact, I've been on the bandwagon myself of watching the negativity day in and day out. You turn on the TV, bad news, death, destruction. Why? Because we're drawn to it. If you Google it, AI has a statistic that says humans crave bad news as high as 80% over good news. Now, that's a shocking statistic. We want bad things spoken into our life versus good thing. It's actually staggering. As a kid growing up, wasn't a lot to watch on TV. On Saturday nights, a show called Hee Haw would come on. Now, that kind of says something about your age if you know the show. That show ran for like 21 years. They had a song on that show that was a classic, Gloom, Despair, and Agony on Me, it was called. Now, if you're younger, YouTube it and you'll get a laugh about what your parents used to watch. So Hee Haw would have these four hillbilly looking characters sitting there with their moonshine jugs drinking, singing this song. Now, I told you I'm no singer, but the main chorus had these words: gloom, despair, and agony on me. Deep, dark depression, excessive misery. If it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Gloom, despair, and agony on me. Anybody that's ever watched that show, I guarantee you they can probably quote that song or sing it to you because it's stuck in their minds. Why? Because of the negativity of that song. It clicks with our flesh. You talk about calling something on yourself from the quantum or the supernatural realm. Gloom, despair, agony, depression, misery, bad luck. Now, I don't know about you, but I believe Satan would have a field day with your life if you quoted those words over yourself. Yet some sing that very song every day in their lives, and they don't even realize they're doing it. Jesus said in Matthew 12, 36 and 37, he actually warned us that every idle word men shall give account of therein in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou wilt be condemned. We love to hear a good sob story about how things went wrong. You know, I got to a point in my life at one time where I hated social media. Facebook first come out. And in fact, I've told many different members of my family I'd never do it again. I'm not the most sociable people. But back in the day when it first started up, I'd post something on there. I'd actually be trying to encourage someone, say something positive in their life. Well, somehow it would get twisted around in someone's mind that I was insulting them. Well, then it'd be on me trying to take my foot out of my mouth, the other person trying to shove that foot farther down my throat. And some of you out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've done the exact same thing. Did you ever wish in life that everybody just had a brain like you and thought like you? Then we'd all just be on the same playing field. Of course, then we'd all be robots, and that's not how God made us. Psalms 139:14 says we're individually, fearfully, and wonderfully made or complex. Anyhow, after eating my foot 2 or 3 times, I finally got off the social media. I thought I'm not going to do it no more. This is how bad it was for me. If you ever notice on this podcast, I tend to have a very country wang to my voice, or as I call it, my hillbilly wang. So we got a new neighbor. True story. This happened a couple years ago. He moves in, and I'm driving by his house, and one of our other neighbors is standing there talking to the new neighbor. So I thought, I need to stop and say hi to this guy, introduce myself. So I did. I stopped the truck, rolled down the window to say hi. The other neighbor I know, he introduces me to the new neighbor. I noticed the new neighbor's car was always home, though. So I thought, well, this dude is either retired or he works from home. So I asked him, I said, are you retired or what? Well, this guy kind of jumps back. And there was some traffic. There's a lot of traffic down by his house. So I thought, well, he didn't hear what I was saying. So I said all the louder, I said, are you retarded or what? Well, this guy begins to turn beet red on me at this point. I mean, it's looked like he's getting fighting mad. The other neighbor begins to laugh. He realizes what's happening with my hillbilly slang voice. He tells the new guy, he said, he's asking you if you're retarded. The new neighbor began to laugh. He said, I thought for sure you were calling me a retard. Well, I had to apologize to the man because I would never call anybody any bad name. So if I get a word or two off from time to time in the podcast, know that it's the hillbilly inside of me. So needless to say, the only time my voice really sounds good is when I'm in the shower by myself singing. So on the social media, I thought I'm never going to do it again. But God comes along and says, hey, Mr. Hillbilly, time to step it up, start a podcast, start being social. Now, it's been an interesting experience getting back into the saddle after being off for years. And what I really find interesting is those that are online that have a more positive outlook versus those that have a more negative spin. The main point is there is life or death in your words, and which one are you feeding people? You are feeding one or the other in your life, though you might not even realize it. Some people live off destructive words. If they're not having a knockdown, drag out spat with somebody every day, they feel like they're not really alive, that there's something wrong. There's personalities out there like that. Some people have to live off anger to get by each and every day. I think probably in the history of the world, in the 1930s and 1940s, one of the most destructive forces in history was a man by the name of Adolf Hitler. His speeches filled with venom, hate, and rhetoric stirred an entire nation to commit some of the most horrific acts the world has ever seen. One person's words amplified by the right time and place can be more destructive than any bomb. It wasn't tanks or planes or even guns that gave Adolf Hitler the power. It was his tongue. The way he manipulated the words sparked violence that resulted in the death of millions of people. In fact, it's been said that words are the most powerful weapon ever created by man. It's no wonder that Proverbs 18:21, we read it a while ago, warns us the tongue has the power of life and death. You see, hands, they can kill in close quarters, but the tongue is limitless in its killing field. It knows no bounds. Once a tongue is let loose, those words can travel around the world and strike someone down. It's what Hitler did with his words. They traveled around the world and shook the whole world. James 3:2-7 says this, indeed, we all make many mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and can also control ourselves in every other way. We can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of a small bit in its mouth. And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. People can tame all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, fish, but no one can tame the tongue. It is relentless and evil, full of deadly poison. We see these wildfires today, devastating destruction and death. And I'm sorry if you've been affected by them. I really am. I hate it. Yet, how did they all start? Just by a little spark. A tongue is the exact same way, can begin with a small spark, yet turn into a wildfire out of control. So I said all this today to get to this point. Scientists have discovered that in this unseen world, quantum universe, that it moves about and reacts to our speech and thought. And again, that light plays a significant role in the quantum realm. In the quantum realm, light can influence the behavior of particles in a way that almost seems like science fiction. Again, we said it earlier, Genesis 3:1, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. 1 John 1:5 says this, "Message we have heard of him and declare unto you that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all." Then you go on to Genesis 5:1. It says, "We're created, mankind, in the image of God." So here's the point. What we speaks creates just like God. In this unknown universe, this quantum realm, our speech makes things happen. Somebody says, "Well, I don't believe it. I can't see it." Well, you know what? You can't see electricity either, but you know it's real because you can use it to light your house. You can use it to cook your meals, cool and heat your house, wash your clothes. If you follow the basic laws and principles of electricity, guess what? It's a good thing. It is. But if you go against it, look out. It can kill you. I worked in the factory with a guy. This one maintenance man had 440 volts of electricity in his hand, and he stepped into a water puddle holding it. And it arced, and it began to shock this guy, and it was more or less killing him. He couldn't put it down. Fortunately, there was a guy right beside him that knocked it out of his hand and basically saved his life. You see, it broke one of the fundamental safety laws of electricity. Turn the power off. The tongue, though, it is one of the smaller organs of the body. The weight for a male is about 70 grams. For a female, about 60 grams. However, its potential for evil is so great that God saw fit to, guess what? Imprison it behind a double jailer, the teeth and the lips. I'm talking about the human tongue. You see, the president has a guard 24/7 called the Secret Service. Now, it sure would be nice if we could have the Secret Service step in and help guard our mouths. However, as interesting as all this is, the problem is not the tongue's physical location, but actually comes down to the spiritual connection in terms of spiritual anatomy. The tongue is directly wed to, guess what? The heart. It is the heart that motivates and manipulates the tongue for good or evil, to bless or curse. Jesus understood this very well in Matthew 25:35. He said, "A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things. An evil man out of the evil treasures brings forth evil things." You see, this is a big statement. The tongue is a tattletale that tells on your heart and discloses the real person. I'm going to say that again. The tongue is a tattletale that tells on your heart and discloses the real person that you are. How many have ever heard that saying, loose lips sink ships? Well, during World War II, the United States developed this slogan to try and deter people from linking information. A lot of ships were getting sunk due to spies back at that time. There was a man who lived in New York who was tired of the cold weather, so he decided to go to Florida. His wife was on a business trip at the time, so he called her to let her know what he was doing and to tell her to meet him in Florida. When he arrived, he sent an email to let her know he was there, but he got a few letters wrong in the address. And instead of going to his wife's email, it went to a pastor's wife in Iowa whose husband had just died the day before. The little old lady turned on her computer and read the email, screamed, and fainted right on the spot. Her family and friends who were there came in, saw her on the floor, and when they read the screen, they understood why she had fainted. It said, "Dearest darling, just wanted you to know I arrived safely. Looking forward to you being with me tomorrow. Sign your husband, P.S. It sure is hot down here." Well, that'd be a scary email. I sure wouldn't want to get that in my email, would you? From somebody that just passed. But you see, our words carry tremendous weight. We can create our very destiny. You know, I worked with a sergeant one time, and he was over me in rank. He told me he'd been a Christian for years. As I got to know him, he began to tell me about himself and his family, and he said, "I'm trying to really get out of here and retire early." And I thought, well, yeah, everybody's trying to retire early. And he said, "No." He said, "You don't understand." He said, "Heart problems run in my family." He said, "My grandpa died from heart complications. My dad, he died. It's hereditary. And I know it's only a matter of time before I get it." He spoke of his future and believed that it would come to pass. Needless to say, about 5 years later, he began to have heart complications and had to have heart surgery. He called it on himself. Closing this out, I usually leave you with a pivotal point. A thought unspoken dies unborn. Powerful, powerful statement. Again, if you don't get nothing else, a thought unspoken dies unborn. In other words, if you're thinking it and it's not good words, just zip up your two lips and don't let that word killer out of the bag. Junk in, junk out. Yous have all heard it. Think that about food, same thing about your mind. What you're thinking in your mind will spew out of your mouth. Proverbs 13:3 says this: "He that keepeth his mouth keepeth his life, but he that openeth wide his lips shall have destruction." You say a little word here or there, it's not going to really matter. You say, "I only say a little cuss word every now and again," it's really not affecting anyone. No one even hears me half the time. Yet I'm telling you, that's not true. Whatever you say, that subatomic world hears what you're saying, which is the spiritual world. And not only that, God hears you and Satan hears you. And you're either feeding one or the other. What we say about God affects what he says concerning us. Now, this is a powerful statement here, too. 1 Peter 3:12. It says, "For the eyes of the Lord are over the righteous, and His ears are open unto their prayers, but the face of the Lord is against them that do evil. Matthew 10:32 and 33 says this, therefore, whosoever shall confess me before man, I will confess before my Father which is in heaven. But whosoever shall deny me before men, will I also deny before the Father in heaven. And you see, it's not only God that hears you, believe it or not, that the angels also hear us. Luke 12:8 and 9. I tell you the truth, everyone who acknowledges me publicly on earth, the Son of Man will also acknowledge in the presence of God's angels. But anyone who denies me here on earth will be denied before God's angels. So even the angels hear what you say, and especially what you say about God. You sow a seed, you will reap the seed. Words of life are words of death. Just a few illustrations. Shut up. You're no good. You're lazy. You're stupid. You will never make it. What is wrong with you? You're too old. No one wants you. No one likes you. You can't do it. You're ugly. Get away from me. Why can't you be more like your brother or your sister? You know, I'm sorry that you were ever born. You're so messed up. You're crazy. You're fat. You sure don't act like no Christian. Give up. God's not with you. You're weak. You will be stuck in this sin forever. Or on the positive side, you're the righteous of God. I'm energetic. You're wise. You're an overcomer. My youth is renewed like the eagles. I'll never leave you or forsake you. Jesus is my friend. I'm wonderfully made in the image of God. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. I have the mind of Christ. I am the redeemed of God. Let us not be weary of doing good, for at the proper time we will harvest. We know that we live in him and he lives in us. Because he has given his spirit, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. That's all it takes, is just being positive, saying good things over yourself and the people around you. Last thing, your words create or destroy. It's up to you to decide what they will do. If you're struggling with this problem, I know a God that says he hears our every need. All it takes is a simple prayer, praying, saying, God, help me be more positive in the way I speak. Again, you're not alone on this. A person that controls the tongue in this world is a perfect person. And we've all been guilty of this, but God will help us do better and be better if we will only ask him. I want to thank you today for joining me on Out of the Far. Remember, no matter what you're facing, you don't have to walk through it alone. Together, we can rise, we can rebuild, and we can live better lives. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and let's keep moving forward together. Again, we're praying believers. If you have a prayer request, please let us know. And if you enjoyed this message, please hit the like and subscribe. Also, a question. Do you think that the quantum realm is associated with the spiritual realm? We'd love to hear your opinion on it in the comment section below. Have a blessed week. Until next time, we love you.